Realization of Oneness, Joel S. Goldsmith, Chapter 10. It shall not come nigh thee if you have studied the preceding chapters carefully. You should be beginning to understand that the universal belief of good and evil operates hypnotically upon every person in the world. Every phase of discord that comes into any person's experience is a mesmeric influence from which he has not learned to protect himself. What with automobile collisions, sudden storms, and even coconuts falling from the trees, a person who leaves his home in the morning has no positive assurance that he will return safely at night. Every morning of the week, safety engineers forecast approximately how many accidental deaths will occur that day. They cannot tell who will be the victims, but those casualties could be you or me or anyone else. Man has become a statistic, but no one wants to be a statistic. No one wants to fall victim to an accident. How then can such mishaps and catastrophes be avoided? Is there a way? Yes, there most certainly is, if those who have been taught the principles of one power, impersonalization, and nothingization can break through their mental inertia in the morning to the extent of consciously realizing. There is but one power operating in this universe. It is not a power of accident, death, disease, or sin. This power is the same power that causes the sun to rise and to set at its appointed time, and the tides to ebb and flow. The power that is operating in this universe is the same power that is operating in my consciousness, and it operates as the law unto my experience. There is no power in any mesmeric suggestion of accident. There is no power in any belief of infection or contagion. There is no power in the carnal mind, in any of its forms, or in any of its beliefs, individual or collective. 1,000 shall fall at thy side, and 10,000 at thy right hand, but it shall not come nigh thee. To whom does that refer? To whom but the person who dwells in the secret place of the Most High, not one who dwells in a house, not one who dwells in an automobile or an airplane, but one who dwells in the secret place of the Most High. Your experience is your state of consciousness, objctified. Those are comforting words to read, but the all-important question before each and every person is, how can I arrive at that state of consciousness? How can I become the one who dwells in the secret place of the Most High? I can assure you that this is not brought about by sitting idly by and accepting what the world doles out to you. It has to be done consciously. Whether you believe it or not, your life is either a conscious activity of your consciousness or the result of your unwillingness to let your consciousness express itself. You either become master of your fate and captain of your soul, or you become a blotting paper for all the beliefs of good and evil that permeate the world, respond to them, and show them forth. You can become master of your fate only by an act of consciousness. This is not accomplished by the attitude, "Oh, God will take care of it." No, no, no. There must be an activity of truth in your consciousness, and that activity of truth has to be built stone upon stone. No matter what form of meditation you practice, it has to be built around the principle that there is only one power, that nothing but God, and the activity of God, is power, and that any sense of evil is impersonal, the activity of the fleshly mind. Where you are makes no difference, whether you go up in an airplane or down in a submarine, or whether you are a soldier on a battle front or a farmer tilling his soil. Whatever the nature of the human picture, it has to be consciously met. Every treatment or meditation must embody these two principles: the realized truth that God itself is infinite and the only power, and that every appearance is but a mesmeric influence, the temptation of the one impersonal evil coming to your consciousness to be accepted or rejected. Remember that temptation, whatever its form, has to be consciously rejected. This is not easy to do because the one thing the world is suffering from is mental inertia. It will not wake up and think. It wants to look at pictures. It does not want to give voice to specific truth. It does not want to live with truth. It wants to depend on an unknown God or on a concept of God that has failed mankind for thousands of years. It is so easy to sit back and prate, "God will do it." But God will not do anything that He is not doing. And do not ever believe that God is going to do anything a minute from now that He is not doing now. Do not believe that you are ever going to know enough truth to influence God to do something for you or for anyone else. Do not think that you will ever be so spiritual that God is going to be your servant and fulfill your wishes, your hopes, or your desires. There is no such God. God is. And God is Izzying this very second. God is being this very second, and God is being all that God can be. There is no way for God to change. God is the same yesterday, today, and forevermore. God is from everlasting to everlasting. Do not try to get God to be anything or do anything. God is. The responsibility is on your shoulders. Awake, thou that sleepest, and Christ shall give thee light. Wake up to the fact that your experience is going to be your own state of consciousness objectified. If you persist in walking around all day without living consciously in the realization of God, omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient God here and now, the all and only power, and without impersonalizing all phases of evil and realizing that they exist only as the arm of flesh or nothingness, you will not bring harmony into your experience. From the moment of waking in the morning to going to sleep at night, you should be doing protective work. But do not think of protective work in the sense of protecting yourself or anybody else from evil. Protective work is the realization that there is no power from which to protect yourself. It is living in the realization that since there is only one power, there are no powers to do anything or be anything, and any suggestion of some other power is a mesmeric influence. That is protective work. Without this realization, even though you are not consciously thinking of accidents or discords, diseases, sins, or temptations, you are permitting yourself to accept unconsciously or subconsciously the world's mesmeric and hypnotic suggestions. Error touches your life in much the same way as subliminal perception operates. Things enter your consciousness which you cannot see, hear, taste, touch, or smell. It is not necessary to see a headline to know that there is trouble in the world, because even though that trouble may not consciously be brought to your attention, you inwardly feel it. You may awaken with a headache, with a dullness, or a sense of fear. None of this originates in you. None of this is a part of you. You may not have heard that there is an epidemic of flu, and yet the first thing you know is that you have come down with an attack of the flu. You were not exposed to it. You did not consciously entertain the idea of it, but that suggestion entered your consciousness. When there is not an inner protection, that is, the understanding that this hypnotic or mesmeric influence, this mental malpractice, or whatever you want to call it, is not power and is not an emanation of God, it can take root in you and appear in any and every form. That is why there are these human experiences of discord and inharmony. Whether as an activity of mind miracles will appear in your life when you practice these principles of spiritual living, and when you can rise above living in this truth merely for your own sake or your family, and begin to apply them to whatever touches your immediate world or the world at large, from government even to the weather. Yes, even weather responds to a realization of spiritual principles. If that seems strange to you, think for a moment. Is weather something that is external to you? Is weather something that just happens? No, weather is an activity of mind, and because there is only one mind, weather is perfect. The only reason that we experience imperfect weather is because there is a belief in two powers which makes for good weather and bad weather. I do not mean by this that you should get the idea that all days should be filled with sunshine, and that would be an evidence of spiritual fruitage. What I mean is that no weather need be what we call bad, destructive, or of a nature that takes life or produces injuries. This must be demonstrated by students where situations involving destructive weather arise before we arrive at the point of proving it on a broader scale. Some of us have done that and have proved that destructive and injurious forms of weather can be dissolved through the understanding that weather exists as an activity of mind. If you do not believe this, try to think of weather without a mind too. Know that there is such a thing as weather. There cannot be an activity outside mind. Which mind? You have no choice. There is only one mind, the instrument of that consciousness which is the source of all action, all law, and all cause. When you behold anything unlike the activity of a spiritual law or life, it is only because of the acceptance of this belief in two powers, two laws, two minds. Nothing happens outside the activity of mind, not a thing. If it did, there would be nobody aware of it. If it is the activity of the mind of God, you cannot change it, you cannot alter it, you cannot improve it, and it would be quite futile to attempt to do so. Do not try to interfere with the movement of the stars, the sun, the moon, or the tides. These are activities of the divine consciousness, the infinite, immortal, eternal, that which was before there was a human being to know it. But on the other hand, Anything that exists as an activity of the carnal mind can be nullified in proportion to the degree of your awareness of these principles. Watch this as it is related to weather. Watch it with tidal waves or with storms, and see how quickly they are dissipated when someone knows and understands that they are not conditions of matter. They are activities of the mesmeric mind. Watch how very often they stop instantaneously because they cannot last long in the face of that realization. If you are threatened with a tidal wave or a hurricane and wish to avoid the experience, know this truth. This threatening storm is not a thing at all. It is an activity of the carnal mind, and the carnal mind has no law, being, substance, or cause. Therefore, this storm is nothing but an image in thought, and an image in thought has no power. Some years ago, a citizen of a community asked for spiritual help for his city. It had rained steadily for 18 months in that area, and many of the businessmen in the community were either bankrupt or on the verge of bankruptcy. After the help was given, there was no more rain, although the Weather Bureau reported that the rain would resume at any moment because the atmospheric conditions that had caused the uninterrupted rainfall were still present, but it did not rain. Then 3 days later, the condition that was supposed to have caused the rain disappeared, but only 3 days after the rain had stopped. God does not stop rain. God knows nothing about rain. Once you begin to realize that error, evil in any form, is merely the product of the universal mesmeric mind, and then nothingize it in the realization that it is not of God, it will make no difference to you whether it is weather, false appetite, sin, disease, lack, limitation, or unemployment. They will all disappear. They begin to disappear the moment you realize that they exist only as an activity of this universal mesmeric mind. But this mind is not God-ordained, and it has no God law to support it. Your knowing that begins to dissolve the picture because all that it ever was a picture, an image in thought. God made all that was made. God is the activity of the sun, the moon, the stars, and the planets. If it were not for the activity of God, there would be no crops in the ground, no oil, iron, or steel, no fish in the sea, and no birds in the air. All these things testify to the fact that the activity of God is infinite and omnipresent, always active. But I have just been told about an approaching storm. Yes, but what is it? Another form of mesmeric suggestion, another activity of the carnal mind that would claim to operate as a condition. It is only a mental image in thought, without life, without law, without being. You build a consciousness of this truth by working with it. You may wake up in the morning and find some rather frightening weather outside. Then the very first thought that should come to you is, yes, but is it power? If it is not power, what difference does it make if the newspapers call it good weather or bad weather? It is just weather. Who thus labels it as good or bad? The farmer who needs rain does not call rain bad. And the umbrella manufacturer does not think of rain as bad. The human being, Adam, calls things good and evil and gives them their names. Safety as an activity of consciousness. Once you know that anything that is the emanation of the carnal mind is without law, without God being, God presence, or God power, you have begun to nullify it. If it does not yield the first time, keep at it 100 times if necessary. Sometimes it takes hundreds of times of knowing the truth to break a situation. Undoubtedly, the master at his height could have broken through any hypnotism immediately, but you and I are not at that level at present. It is only the degree and the depth of your awareness that really meet a situation. So if you have not had a sufficient awareness today to meet an apparently unyielding situation, go back to a realization of the principles a second, third, or fourth time, and keep at it until the problem dissolves. The time will come when you will find that there will be very little human effort involved, very little mental effort, but that will come only as these principles are embodied within you and become real to you. In the early stages of working consciously with these principles, whenever you receive suggestions of bad weather, accidents, sickness, sin, war, depressions, lack, or unemployment, as soon as these things touch your consciousness, it is necessary to be alert enough to know that this is the tempter. This is the temptation. This is a suggestion of a power and a presence apart from God. Then you must reject it in the realization that it is nothing but the fleshly mind. With that, you dismiss it, and that is the end of it. It takes only a minute, but in that minute you have consciously recognized within yourself the power of truth, and truth being infinite, nothing else can enter. On every side, you are witnessing sin, disease, death, lack, limitation, unemployment, disfigurement, alcoholism, drug addiction, poverty. All these things confront you on the streets, in the press, and on the radio, and you cannot afford to be a blotting paper. You cannot afford to let those things enter your consciousness and take root. You must be consciously alert to realize, yes, these are pictures of sense. These are mental images, suggestions being presented to me. But in my understanding of one God, one power, one law, they are nothing. Then you will find that you are abiding in the secret place of the Most High, and none of these things will come nigh your dwelling place. If not literally, none of these things, certainly few. And when they do come, you have a principle with which to work to free yourself from the belief in them. As far as I know, there are no human beings on earth who have completely avoided all discords and inharmony, not even those who have locked themselves away in monasteries or convents, because that same old human mind follows them wherever they go, and it accepts these suggestions even when they are not aware of them. There is no place where we can go to hide from the world's troubles, because wherever we go we carry our mind with us. And if it is a receiving station for the suggestions of the world, we do not have to see, hear, taste, touch, or smell them in order to become aware of them. They are in the atmosphere. Jesus referred to them as appearances when he said, "Judge not according to the appearance, but judge righteous judgment." Everything that came to his awareness was an appearance, and he never judged by what he saw. He let it pass by in the realization that it was only an appearance and could have no power. Laying up spiritual treasures as we engage in this practice, we will save ourselves from many of the woes and negative experiences of this world. But what is even more important is that once we have proved these principles in our own experience, we will see how quickly our conscious awareness of them begins to set others free. They do not have to know that we are knowing the truth of their spiritual identity, and yet many will receive healings without knowing the direction from which their help comes. Since we are not seeking personal glory, but only to witness a principle in operation, we need not be concerned about getting credit for any healing for which we may be the instrument. To us, the joy and the satisfaction are that we have discovered a principle of life that we can live by and which will benefit those who are receptive and responsive to it. Getting credit is a lot of nonsense, because it makes no difference how many medals are pinned on us while we are here or how many honors or titles we receive in this life. We cannot take them with us. Our money, stocks, and bonds we check at the probate court as we go out, and the medals, the titles, and the honors are taken down from the wall, stored away for a few years, and then burned. These are of no avail to us, not one bit. Even the good that is sometimes spoken of us is relatively unimportant because there are probably just as many saying the opposite about us. What we do take with us as we leave this plane is every bit of good that we have brought into active expression in our life, and every bit of spiritual enlightenment we have gained. These are stored up where neither moth nor rust doth corrupt, and these we take with us to become the foundation of our next experience. Every spiritual principle of life that we embody becomes our state of consciousness throughout all time, just as every skill that we attain here is ours throughout our experience here. The spiritual principles we learn are our protection, our health, safety, security, and peace. And we know that as the world awakens to this truth, these are the principles that will eventually bring about freedom for every individual on the face of the globe. At first, it is hard work to apply these principles throughout the day because we forget more often than we remember. It is usually 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning before we remember how much we have forgotten that we should have been consciously knowing since 7 o'clock, and then we have to start in at noon to make up for lost time. By the time we get into bed at night, we have really gotten ourselves into a jam, because then we have to get up to undo all the forgetting we have done throughout the day. It is a strict discipline for at least a year, and oftentimes much longer than that. You will understand what I mean if you try just such a simple thing as making an agreement with yourself that you will never eat a bite of food of any kind, or drink a drop of any kind of liquid without consciously recognizing that God is the source. Then, at the end of the day, count how many times you have forgotten this, and you will know how difficult it is. But on the other hand, watch the magical effects in your life when you do reach that place where you consciously recognize with every bite of food that but for God it would not be there for you to consume, that but for God's grace you would not have it because it would not be on earth, and but for God's grace you would not be able to digest it. Come to the realization that the most trifling acts of your day, such as waking up in the morning or sleeping at night, cannot be performed without an activity of this invisible spirit, and observe what happens when you begin to acknowledge him in all your ways. Notice what happens as you consciously remember when you get into your automobile that God drives not only your car, but since there is only one being, one selfhood. God is the driver behind the wheel of every car. Your conscious recognition of this sets you free from statistical beliefs. For a long, long time, this is hard work. This is not an easy path, but eventually something beautiful begins to happen. You no longer have to think consciously. Thoughts come of their own accord, automatically arising within you, and you really understand what Paul meant when he said, "I live, yet not I, but Christ liveth in me." After that, there is very little of conscious effort. It all flows from within.